This is Derek Lambert. Derek, welcome to Truth Wanted.
Thanks, Dan. Appreciate you having me on and getting to share this time with you, man.
Absolutely. Yeah. When we don't have tech problems, it's a really fun time. I promise you. So Derek, you are the creator of the Myth Vision podcast. You have a crazy upload schedule, by the way. I don't know if you do this all the time. You've uploaded stuff like every single day, which is crazy. Yeah. I don't know how you keep up with that, but your podcast, you talk about the Bible, you talk about sacred geometry, you talk to experts, you talk to all kinds of people about just religion in general, but also I don't know, the interesting parts and the harmful parts of it too, as well.
Yeah, definitely all over the place. You pointed out really well. Yeah, I love studying this stuff because once you know it, it's like watching a magic trick. I've told this time and time again, and recently, if you and me went to a David Blaine magician show and we were sitting in there and he starts to levitate, we're all going to sit and go, holy crap, even if you know it's a trick somehow. But most people are sitting back thinking this is real, probably, using the Bible as an example. Right. And then this guy in the corner goes, psst, hey, let me show you something. They're not going to want to hear this. You may not even want to hear this, but check it out. Let me show you how the trick's done. And they take you backstage and they show you this is how he's levitating. This is the reality of what this is all about. And there's some magic in that. There's magic in knowing this. And then you look at everyone else out in the crowd. It's kind of like Plato's cave. You look at them and they're not wanting to hear it. Get out of my face. You don't know what you're talking about. David Blaine's my messiah, my hero, and you're going, listen, there's so many people like this, and you want to do comparative mythology or whatever. I just say that to say, once you see how the trick's played, you can't unsee it.
Yeah, that's interesting because, you know, you are an ex-Christian. I'm also an ex-Christian. And so looking back at my own experience, it is kind of weird that I did have these kind of cultural, you know, blind sights to my own religious belief versus other religious beliefs of the world. Like, it's weird that I prioritized my religious belief as something being super special because it just happened to be what my community believed. But just because Christianity, even if it is the most popular religion right now, you know, popularity doesn't actually say anything about truth, right? And if I tried to talk about this to people in lots of places in the world, they don't have the same kind of understanding, like, oh yeah, of course, like a man rose from the dead 2,000 years ago in Israel, and like we all just kind of, you know, believe that. That's just not what is common for a lot of people. So yeah, I do take it for granted.
Absolutely. Get into all that stuff right now with that argument of consensus. Islam will be #1 in the world. Then you're going to hear, I mean, obviously Christians will start then saying largest doesn't matter. Now, a lot of them do still say that, but I'm saying they feel like, well, we could say that because we're the big boys on the block. Well, one day when Islam becomes the priority or the majority, you're going to hear Muslims say that. Right. They're going to say, hey, look, we've got the greatest because why? Allah guided us, and this is why we're so successful. It's not that we force all of our children to become this and that our conquered lands that we go and take, that they become this way as well. Nah, it's not that.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and then Christians will point out, well, like, you know, Christianity, there, if you look in the book of Revelation, it's supposed to be spoken in every language in the world, in all countries and stuff, and that there would be persecution, you know, like there's, I don't know, there's always arguments to look at where people will justify whatever situation Christianity is currently facing, because the Bible just has, I don't know, like a situational prophecy to look at, it seems like, for all of them there.
Yeah, everyone does this in every book. They all apply it to now. It doesn't matter if they're talking about the 1st century. Somehow it means something to me right now. And that's some of the stuff I deal with as well, is what did it mean to the original authors and to the original audience? Trying to uncover that is, it really kind of strips away when you see all these crazy fanatic doomsday preppers like I thought the rapture was going to happen, the end of the world. I had dreams. I was extreme. I was an extreme fundamentalist, part of a cult, a house church. And we were thinking the end was going to happen any day now. I said, I'm a horrible dad when I first had my firstborn. Why would I bring a son into this world and it's about to go to chaos? What kind of parent am I? Like, I literally beat myself up because of an idea. Wow. Now I'm like, wow, the power of these ideas is intense, but I'm wanting to go into the magician's room and say, psst, hey, come over to Myth Vision. Let me show you.
Right.
Let me show you how this trick has worked. Let me show you. Yeah.
What was that process like then? How did you go from this house church Christian who had guilty feelings about the upcoming rapture to making a YouTube channel where you're posting literally every day about how none of this stuff is real?
I used to actually have a YouTube channel when I was a Calvinist, and it wasn't like I did it for popularity. I'd get some sermons and do little topics about Calvinism. I was a Reformed Calvinist at one point after I was this pre-mill dispensationalist. And long story short, I ended up in a situation where I would struggle with addiction. Drug addiction is a part of my story. I suffered with serious trauma growing up with an alcoholic father. And, you know, he even didn't know how to control the way he acted. So to give you kind of, without going into the whole story, every time I'd fall, and I'll use the term fall for kind of a metaphor for saying struggled in life. When I struggled in life, I always questioned the things I held to. Never questioned God's existence. I questioned, was what I was believing about these things true? And why is my life struggle not matching the reality of the Holy Spirit that I'm supposedly filled with? Like, how come I don't live like everyone is expecting you to supposedly live as a Christian? Years of doing this. I mean, years and years on and off. I struggled with drug addiction for 12 years or so. And I'd get clean. I'd go about the Bible. I'd go to the straight and narrow, go to church, and I'd change my position as I studied. I really took it serious. And I'd study and study, went from one position to another. And I'm not going to name all these names, but tons and tons of theological positions to finally get into a point where I found this position called full preterism. I am going to name it because it's what put me on the outskirts of orthodoxy. I got excommunicated from the church, the Presbyterian church. And I was teaching other people, Jesus said the end was going to happen, not in our lifetime. Hence me saying I had dreams about the end and stuff. When I read the Bible, someone pointed out to me, Jesus was talking about then, not 2,000 years from now. So I started to look at it and I said, holy moly, this is a fact. Looking at the Greek word mellow and started delving into the text. Every single time you see it, it's talking about then. Whoever wrote these books, they thought it was going to happen in their life. So I started telling everyone, guess what? Because Jesus is God, and I believed he was God, he did come back. But we just don't understand how that happened. And the end did happen. So you redefine everything, and it runs into some problems. So I leave. I leave the whole church, and I'm believing the Bible. And that's when I started to look into things I never would have. Jesus compared to other gods. Yeah. I couldn't even play with that. That was not even an option. Till you know, a couple of years after I left Christianity, but I was still called a Christian. I still believed. And when I saw Jesus was similar in many ways, not identical, not a Xerox copy, but he had similar attributes. He did similar things to other divine beings in antiquity, whether it be Dionysus or other gods. And I said, well, what makes Jesus better? So my concept of God expanded. It went from fundamentalist, this Jesus bubble, to God is like the 6 wise men of Hindustan. If you ever heard that poem.
Yeah. I actually know that one.
They're all like touching the elephant. And they're all blind, and they're all describing God in different ways. But they're all partly in the right, and all were wrong. Yeah, that's what I thought.
Like a pantheist kind of God, or just a God that's bigger than Christianity, that we're all kind of going on these roads towards figuring out, you know? Yeah, for sure.
Everyone is doing it. Everyone in their own culture, you know, God's revealed himself in his own way in other cultures. But what happened when that bubble expanded from, I had the one, the way, the truth, the life, and it is a small bubble, but it had a lot of power over my life. When I started to learn about actual concepts that are real, about comparison to other religions and gods, and delving into the text, Genesis 1 through 11. Where did Noah's flood come from? Oh, you mean to tell me there's other stories that are older? It's actually the template that they're building their narrative off of? Well, how authentic is Noah's flood then? Right. How authentic is it that one man God chose and all the animals? And it's insanity when you start to delve into believing this literally becomes absurd. So I started to algorize and like expand and stretch the meaning so that it wasn't so strict and literal. And my God expanded so much that it no longer had power over me. In fact, I started to go, well, if this is the case, how do I know that that's God and not nature? Like, how can you tell the difference after you start to expand God out to being this in everything and he's all things and he's everything? And you're like, well, isn't nature? Isn't all reality that? So if you want to define it as God, then you've literally changed what the definition of God has always meant in every ancient text. We're now just giving it a new spin and redefining it now that we have better science. Yeah. So as science starts to come out, we start to make God compete, and God's bigger and better than that. So
that's rambling. No, there's a lot of things there that like I would want to hit on. First of all, it's very funny to me that it's not. Well, it's you have a story of addiction in your life, and usually that's like the telltale trope of someone becoming a major Christian. But for you, it was the opposite. So one, that's funny. I do think that's funny, just in an ironic sense. But also just like I relate so much to your story in the sense that I also had these blinders on where it was just sacrilegious to make these kinds of comparisons to other world religions and stuff. And to be able to start to do that in a real academic sense really gave me pause. And it really made me wonder why I wasn't getting all this kind of information in church about the Bible, the history of it, the history of the people within it, and the culture surrounding it, at least to the academic level that I was later interested in. And I realized it might have been because if more people really understood this, that they might not be meeting at church on Sunday to talk about this stuff. You know, like most times, and this isn't speaking to every church community, but most people that go to church aren't doing putting on their academic lenses on and viewing the original text in the Greek and the Hebrew. You know, pastors will do it occasionally to make some sort of, point, but it's never a full-blown study of the text. Usually that's just to make some sort of nice message for the community to live off of. I mean, like when I started really looking at the academic side of things and what the scholars who have been spending majority of their lives looking at were saying, I realized like, oh no, this is this is bad, because suddenly the Greek books that I was reading in high school about the Odyssey and stuff and how I thought that was crazy, like suddenly I could look at the Bible the same way, and I couldn't stop looking at it that way. It completely changed things for me. So
that's an excellent point. In fact, ancient Near Eastern stuff, like when you start looking at the Mesopotamian narratives and their gods and stuff, and then you look at the Bible, why are we looking at the Bible as this thing divorced from other ancient Near Eastern documents? These are things I understand why. I say that to give the person listening to what I'm saying to consider that. Why? Well, because it's like rooting for a football team your parents raised you to believe and follow into, or whatever it might be. It could be any type of thing. And another thing I want to say before we get some people who might think, oh, I don't like what this guy's saying. I would debate someone over the fact that I love the Bible more now than I ever have for what it actually is. It's a document. It's a document. It's like, can you imagine? Do you think David Blaine, I'm going to use the analogy of magic since I already started it. Do you think he likes doing magic? Absolutely.
I hope so. I hope so. Otherwise, he must be very depressed. But yeah.
Okay, you're right. I'm reading into his mind, but I'm saying this guy literally comes up with ways to stick rods to his arms and stuff, right? He's doing tricks. Some of them might be real stuff that he's trained his body to do, but the guy absolutely loves magic. He knows it's not real. It's not true. It's a trick.
Yeah.
He knows that. But the guy's fascinated. He's a fanatic about magic. I've turned into that about the Bible. I have turned into that kind of person, biblically speaking, Old, New Testament, you name it, wanting to go deep and find out, hold on, what is going on here? Why are there contradictions? I never even could accept that there were.
Yeah.
But now I see there are. But what I've seen revealed about those contradictions tells you something about the authors. So we start getting deep into these things. I would never have done it. It was taboo. I was going to go to hell for doing this. I would never have said this. 8-9 years ago, couldn't picture myself ever saying these words.
So that's an interesting perspective, because for me, to use the metaphor, like me learning about the secret behind the magic trick was morbid almost. It's almost a sense of horror for me, because I'm looking at this thing and I'm realizing, wow, the justification of owning human beings as slaves, the justification of the submission of women into arbitrary roles, like all the systemic oppression you could ever think of, has been rooted in this book for some point in time or another, and has influenced the world in these crazy ways. Like, has it influenced people to do positive things? Sure, but right. I mean, you know, at what point is that threshold going to be the cost isn't worth it? You know, for me, I say it's not worth it, and I don't think it continues to be worth it. But like, I don't know, the more I learn about it, the more I just think about the absurdity of it all. You know? So
I guess you're right. And everything you said, I agree with, by the way. I'm not saying I love the Bible as if this is something that we should start to, everybody needs to read it and believe it. No. The same way you read the Odyssey. If you read the Odyssey, there are many slaves. And the gods endorse these ideas, just like Yahweh of the Old Testament endorses slavery.
Right.
I'm still smiling, not because I'm saying that's a good thing. I'm saying because that's ancient literature in a time in which these things were practiced, not something applicable to us today. My delving deep into the Bible is to divorce this ancient document from current day reality. I think it's absurd to think Jesus is talking about 2021 and Donald Trump is the mark of the beast, even though some I think I'm just making the point, like, it goes on and on and on. And when you know what it actually meant and you look at the original context, some stuff is up for grabs. I mean, scholars debate over particular details, but I'm 100% on board with you on that. There are horrific things that do not apply today, but if you read any ancient Near Eastern documentation, you're not going to look at that text and say, hey, we're going to apply the Hammurabi Code to us today. What? You're going to apply that? No. This book needs people, I think, to delve into it so that we can educate people on what it is. We've been born with blinders, or we jumped into this because of emotions. Someone in the crowd right now, you're going through a serious, troubling time. I could sense it in my spirit. And you need the Lord, and He's ready to heal you. Oh Lord, you know what I'm saying? Like, speaking in tongues, and they're gonna grab you, and you're hurt because you're going through a trauma with your wife or kid, or a loved one died or something. That's the stuff they do, and you don't even go into Christianity thinking, all right, I've read all the volumes on planet Earth, and because I know this is accurately true to the core, I'm going to believe in Christianity.
Right.
No.
Right. That's not most people's story. It's just not. Yeah. And like if you really look at it and you stand to think, like, how many people believe this thing because they just grew up that way? That is just the vast majority of Christians on the planet Earth right now. Like, obviously there's converts of people later in life, but even the ones later in life, most of them grew up in Christian culture. You know, they grew up around people who knew, you know, like there's hardly a single person in the United States that doesn't know who Jesus is, right? Like, whereas if you ask the average person, name like 3 facts about Muhammad, like, I guarantee you're not going to get the same level of fast responses that you would with Jesus. So I don't know. But it does pain me to see when people just use the book for their own gain like that. But we'll talk about that and more in just a second here, Derek, because now we should get to some callers. Are you ready to get to some callers? All right, cool.